This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Sins of the Father, Part 10. When we left off, Donovan had guffawed after Portia told him that this was probably not the time to piss her off. And when the Queen Mother went to Trinidad to tell Catherine that Nigel was deceased and about his 5 illegitimate children, she was the one who got the shock of a lifetime when she found out that Catherine already knew about his put up in Miami and the 5 children that he had with her. Q and Angela had gotten some much needed advice from Angela's cousin Dr. Miranda, her Uncle Manny's oldest daughter. And when that discussion ended, they had a conversation with Melissa. Angela said, "Melissa, we're very concerned about the decisions that you made associated with that situation with your Uncle Donovan and your Aunt Maribel." Melissa said, "I gathered that." Angela said, "Talk to me. What are you thinking? What are you feeling?" Melissa said, "I think that I must have got something wrong, and there's something really important that I'm missing, and nobody's willing to tell me what it is. And I'm kind of scared to find out what exactly it is that I'm missing. And I have a feeling that instead of telling me, I'm going to have to make a hard decision." Angela said, "You, my dear, are wise beyond your years." You said, "So this is the thing. We're not upset with you about doing what you thought was best under the circumstances. We always want you to listen to the Holy Spirit, to follow God's direction, to trust your own instincts. But we also need you to question any direction that runs counter to God's word. And we know that sometimes it can be difficult to do that, especially when you're only 14 years old. You have some amazing gifts. That's why we sent you to the light. We believed that that was the best place for you to be so that you could develop those gifts. Not to learn how to control them, but to learn how to operate within the bounds of them. Our concern is that what happened there recently," Melissa said, "You mean the failed abduction?" You said, "Precisely. Coupled with all of the difficulties that you survived. We believe that they may have impacted your memories and the way that you interpreted the messages that you received as a result of your gift." Angela said, "And we think that it's important that you get a handle on all of the details, your thoughts and feelings about them, and how you see you as a result before you go back to the light." Q said, "And before you find yourself in the position to have to rely on your gift again in a tough situation. Truth of the matter is, when you're gifted, you'll always have tough situations." And then Melissa surprised them and said, "Kind of like the one you're in now, Daddy?" And because Q had no idea how much Melissa knew or how, he simply said, "Yeah." Meanwhile, in Miami, when Donovan finished laughing, Donovan said, "Do you know that there was a time when all you had to do was bat your eyelashes, girl, and I would have took you down. I would have banged your back out all over this damn cabin, inside and outside. I would have wore your behind out. But God let me get saved, baptized, and committed to abstinence. And then he let your crazy behind kidnap me. I knew damn well in that car when you told me you was having an asthma attack that it was a damn ruse. But I didn't know how you was gonna get the drop on me. So when I dumped your purse out and that asthma inhaler was in there and I reached for it, I was prepared for you to hit me or do something crazy. But what did you do, Portia?" Portia said, "Oh, I jerked the steering wheel until you went flying. And then I pulled out the hypodermic needle that I had hidden in my bra, jabbed that joint in your neck and put you to sleep." "And how exactly did you get me here, Portia?" Donovan asked. Portia said, "I pulled that damn rental car over and jogged back to the restaurant. Got the car that Jeff had given me. 'Cause see, He told me that when you got here, you was going to be suspicious because you had spent a couple of hours or something with Maribel alone. He was tracking that necklace you was wearing and her cell phone. So he told me to have the needle prepared. And I knew that if you was really suspicious, you wasn't going to let me keep my purse. So I put the needle in my bra. And since I was driving, you wasn't going to risk me actually having an asthma attack. I do have asthma though, by the way. So when you was knocked out, I jogged back to the restaurant, jumped in Jeff's car, pulled up, and put you in it. Donovan said, and how did your little behind get me out of one car and into the other? Portia said, oh, it was a struggle, but I did it. And if you thinking to yourself that somebody in your family is probably watching this live and you want them to know how you ended up in this situation, they should know, and so should you, that this entire house is booby-trapped. And I'm the only one who knows the code to disarm the bombs that will go off if you even try to get out of here, or if they try to come in here. Donovan said, good to know. But how'd you get me in the house, Portia? Then Portia said, oh, that cocktail of drugs that Jeff gave me to give to you, they knocked you out, but they made it so that you would follow commands. So you did everything I told you to do. And if you don't get with the program, I'm gonna have to give you some more. Donovan said, you do know that if you keep my hands and my feet tied up for much longer, I'ma die, right? Because I'm already starting to lose feeling in my hands. Portia said, and you know that if you don't give me what I want, you're gonna die anyway. So you might as well give me what I want. Donovan said, Portia, you not tired? We've been up all night. You've been trying this all night. God took me through a season of my life where I had to learn self-control, where I had to learn to control my sexual desires. And no matter how hard you try, it's not gonna happen. Not to mention, I'm hungry as hell and I'm tired. Why don't we eat something, get some sleep, and try again later? Portia said, you wanna eat something? I'm right here. Eat me. And then I'll think about giving you some food. Donovan closed his eyes, shook his head, and prayed. In his mind, he said, Lord, please help me. What do I do? And then he heard Melissa's voice in his head saying, Uncle D, you're going to have to do something you don't want to do in order to get out of a tough situation. It was one of the many strange things that Melissa had said to him at his house when they were practicing for Wise's big surprise. Donovan realized that Melissa knew that this was going to happen, and that was God's way of preparing him. He opened his eyes and looked at Portia and said, you are a beautiful woman. I saw that the first time that I laid eyes on you. And while I wasn't looking at you romantically, because at the time I was involved with Rennie, still very much so, in love with Maribel, I didn't miss that. You deserve to have a man want you for you, to love you and want to make love to you, Portia. And I can give you what you want, but I need food and sleep. And the only way you really gonna get what you want is if you untie me. Portia said, that's not gonna happen. Donovan said, you want me to pleasure you? And you done been with Jeff? How I know you clean? Portia said, cause Jeff is crazy too. He made sure I had a full STD panel before we got it in. We've always been one another's go-to partners when neither of us was with anybody. And he's an avid condom user, despite requiring that every partner he has is tested. Donovan said, so what's the plan? You gonna sit on my face and I'm not gonna be able to use my hands? The least you could do is loosen the ropes a little bit. Portia said, and then what? Donovan said, I get the feeling that Jeff ain't really do it for you. Loosen these ropes a little bit, and I'll show you how a real man uses his tongue. Meanwhile, in Dallas, Big Wood has reluctantly accepted his new role. He is now the right-hand man of the kingpin of the St. James family, and he's already at work. His first assignment, retracing Jeff's steps in Dallas. Portia could not have booby-trapped the entire cabin in Florida alone. Jeff had shown himself to be a technological genius. He developed the technology that was in operation in the necklaces and bracelets that the Queen Mother distributed. On a few occasions, while he was in training to become Nigel's replacement, he'd improvise devices that went boom. So Big Wood was responsible for ensuring that Jeff hadn't placed any of those devices at the estate that Stephanie and Angela owned, at Bedtime, where he paid Maribel that visit, or at Maribel's estate, even though he hadn't been there in months. Not only did he have all of those locations swept for devices, he also had them swept for bugs. Jeff's manifesto said that he knew a lot more about the family than he could have ever learned from Jira or from his own research. Thankfully, no devices that go boom were found. But at Maribel's estate, in the sitting room, a bug was found. And according to Michael, it was piggybacking off the home Wi-Fi and sending a signal to Miami. That means Jeff would have overheard conversations that were held in the sitting room. Most likely conversations that Manny had on the phone and in person with heads of the 5 families and with family members, including Donovan. 3 days later, Melissa was in Puerto Rico with Angela and Mom Brenda. She'd agreed to go to treatment, but she wanted her mother and her Nana Brenda there. And since LJ, Regina, Ron, Anya, Mom Joyce, and Miss Bernie had returned from Orlando with the children, Q and Angela felt comfortable with that decision. If all went well in Puerto Rico, Angela will be back in a matter of days, and just enough time for Uncle Nigel's funeral and Q's coronation. Just about everybody had a go at Jeff, and he was a lot tougher than he looked, because he wasn't coming up off of nothing. Manny and Stephanie could only go so hard because he was still recovering from a broken left leg and a bullet wound to the right leg. Everybody was following the Queen Mother's orders not to kill Jeff until Donovan was found. And Jeff was smart enough to realize that the longer he went without talking, the longer he'd keep his life. With his plans ruined, he didn't care if he lived or died, but he was not going to die and give them what they wanted. When the Queen Mother and Catherine returned to the States, the Queen Mother was ready for a face-to-face with Jeff, and Catherine was ready for a face-to-face with Annabelle, her husband's long-term mistress. As instructed, Amir had negotiated a meeting between the two ladies. When he approached Annabelle, she said, "If you're here, then something's wrong with my Nigel." Amir said, "I understand that he prepared you for this day, so you should already know that you're going to have a conversation with the woman on the throne. I strongly suggest that you agree to the meeting and that you be on your best behavior." Annabelle said, "So you're not going to tell me what happened to him?" Amir said, "That's not my place. After the meeting, I'll distribute what was set aside for you and your children to the same account that I've been making distributions to." Annabelle asked, "What about the properties, the houses, the cars?" Amir said, "It should be enough money for you to find somewhere to go. Distribute the money amongst your children and spend it however you like. My suggestion is that you start packing now." Annabelle said, "I'm taking this to court." Amir said, "What court?" "Nigel is a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. Everything he owns goes to his next of kin. That would be his wife and any legitimate children that they might have. You've received a generous monthly allowance for what? The past 25 years? If you managed it well and didn't spend it all on hair and makeup, nails, and clothes, then coupled with this final payout, you should be good. You couldn't have been stupid enough to be living off what he gave you, right? You had a job, a business, right?" Pissed and embarrassed, Annabelle said, "My financial status is none of your damn business." Amir said, "Well, you asking me questions, so I'm asking you questions in return." Nigel obviously cared for you. He cared enough to leave you this last token. All of your children are adults, so he didn't have to. Accept the gift and move on. Don't make this difficult. There isn't a person alive who would put their own lives on the line to save yours. So when Catherine arrived, Amir was at the airport. He said, "Miss Catherine, I'm so sorry for your loss." Catherine said, "I appreciate that, Amir. I'm sorry for your loss as well. Now where is she?" True was also at the airport, waiting for the Queen Mother. The Queen Mother said, "Take me to see Jeff and call Maribel." Maribel got on the phone. The Queen Mother said, "Rennie is on her way back to the campus. She's going to get the supplies that she needs, and then she'll be heading here. I need you to meet me at the safe house." At the safe house, the Queen Mother said to Jeff, "So your plan was to kill me. How's that working out for you?" Jeff said, "It's not quite over yet, is it, Queen Bee?" The Queen Mother said, "When I'm done with you, you gonna wish that it was over. You took advantage of a woman that I love dearly, and you're gonna have to pay for that on this side of creation." Jeff said, "I don't know what you think you could possibly do to me that hasn't already been done, and none of it worked. Don't waste your time, old woman." Then Maribel walked in, and the Queen Mother said, "Darling, you have 4 hours before the family-only memorial service starts for Nigel. That should be plenty of time to get the password for his laptop and any of the accounts that you need the password for to see what's going on in that cabin. Just let your brother know when you've got it." Then she looked at Jeff and said, 4 hours is a long time. She turned back to Maribel and said, "You have everything you need?" When Maribel said yes, the Queen Mother said, "I'll leave you to it." And then she exited, stage left. Maribel pulled up a chair right in front of Jeff and rolled a medical cart up next to her seat. She sat down, looked at Jeff and said, "We can do this the easy way or the hard way. It's all up to you. All I want to know is 2 things: the password to that laptop and the address where Portia has Donovan." Then she popped open the top of the medical case, pulled out a scalpel and a syringe and said, "Let's start with that password." Jeff said, "Dr. Lopez, what happened to the Hippocratic Oath?" Maribel said, "Oh, that went out the window when you was drugging people. See, our physical experience may have started with that maristication, but Michael found your journal. You drugged me, and now it's my turn. Now, I don't know how much longer Bella intends to allow you to live, but I plan to turn your outie into an innie. You're going to live the rest of your days with one less functioning member. Now, the conditions may not be ideal, but I have everything that I need to ensure that this process is as painful as possible. And since this is not a democracy, I suggest you start talking before I fillet your penis." Then Maribel stood up, went to the door, opened it and said, "Fellas, I'm gonna need some help in here." And 3 of the soldiers entered the room. One took Jeff's left arm, the other took his right, and the third cut his shorts off. Maribel said, "Did I ever tell you that I did a 5-year fellowship? The doctor who provided support for the queer community. We did sex reassignment surgeries. It was my pleasure to help people who'd fought with identity issues to live in their truth and become the women that they wanted to be. And it's my honor to be able to do the same for you today."